Hey everyone, this is Baylor, and in this video we're going to look at setting up AVA for a running JavaScript test from scratch, and we're going to also take a look at setting up a Docker container so that you can run your Node test without actually having Node installed. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is make a new directory called testing. And what I'm going to do here is this will be our project directory. And so I'm going to echo node modules into a get-ignore file. And the reason I'm doing this is because I always start new projects with a get-ignore. And so we'll just say create project. And what we'll also do is npm init with the default settings. So we can just have a package.json file available to us. And we will add that as well and say add package.json. And then what we'll do is we need to install AVA, and we're also going to install Babble. So we'll say npm install. We're going to save dev AVA, Babble, and Babel preset ES 2015. So once this finishes, we will have everything we need to actually run Babble, or we'll run AVA, and AVA will transpile our JavaScript files automatically through Babble. And we're using the ES 2015 preset here so that we have the import export keywords. So that is finished. And what we'll do is just git commit. So we'll say that we add package, AVA, and Babble. Cool. So the first thing we're going to do is we have everything available to us. We need to configure AVA, and so we'll hop into that package.json file, and this is what was generated for us. The only changes that have been made really are that it added these three dependencies. But what we want to do is we want to change our script for the test. So instead of echoing no test specified, what we'll do is actually run AVA. And so now if we hop back into our shell, we run npm test, you can see it tries to run AVA, but it couldn't find any test, and so it failed. So what we're going to do is we will just define and tell AVA also, this runs AVA, but it doesn't actually configure AVA. And so we'll hop down here in the bottom and we'll say AVA, and we'll define what does it do. And really what we want to do is tell it to inherit from, or we want to tell it to have Babel inherit. And what this will do is it will tell AVA that whenever it starts up, that it needs to load our babel.rc file, and that way whatever we define for Babel, most likely for Webpack or however we're building our JavaScript applications, AVA will follow that as well from our babel.rc. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to tell AVA to require by default. And this can be an array or a string. I always do an array. And we're going to tell that we need to require a babel-register. And if you Google babel-register, it's a part of Babel that basically means that it overrides the require in Node, so that it's when I say like of our fs equals require file, I think. I'm not a Node guy, so there we go. Whenever we do that, babel-register will actually override this require, and so it will transpile the JavaScript files as they're being required. This is not something you'll probably want in development, but in testing it's very handy because it allows you to write your ES 2015 or whatever Babel configurations that you have and not have to do anything beforehand to make AVA work. So once now that we've configured AVA, what we need to do is create a babel.rc file, and we're just going to tell this to have a preset of our Babel or ES 2015. And that's everything we need. That will actually configure AVA, and now as you can see, we have our babel.rc with our presets. We've told our npm tep runner that for running tests we use AVA, and we've also configured AVA to require babel-register and also to load our babel.rc. So we will say configure Babel and AVA. So now that that's done, we need to create some tests. And so we'll just make two directories, a source and a test directory. And we'll hop into our test and we'll create a greeter.test.js file. And what we'll do here is we're going to say we would import test from AVA. And this is just basic AVA. And AVA's syntax for writing tests or declaring them is just test. And that has a first argument that's a string. And so we'll say it says hello. And then it gives you basically like a promise. And so we can just say T is hello world. And we're going to have a class called greeter. We're going to call greet on it. And so with this defined, if we run npm test, it's going to, you can see it runs AVA, and then we have a failure because greeter is not defined. And so we can define that, and we'll just hop into, we'll edit a file in source greeter.js. This is where I was testing this earlier. And so inside of this new file, we will define a default or export a default class called greeter. And then in our JavaScript file, we'll say import greeter from, and then we have source greeter. And so now if we run our npm test, it will fail because now we have greeter, but we don't have a greet function. And so we'll define that, and we'll just make this static, and it'll be greet. And if we run npm test again, now we'll fail because we were expecting hello world, but instead we got defined. And so this is easy. We'll just say return hello world, run our test again, and then that passes. So we'll add everything to get, and we'll say add greeter. And this is very simple. You could expand upon this and do something like greets. Or greets, yeah, by name. And we could do basically the same thing here, except if we pass in a name like Bob, then we expect to see hello Bob. And when we run this, this is where, when I use AVA in Vim, generally, as you can kind of tell, I keep my tests on the right pane here, the right split, and then I put my source file on the left side, so I can just hop back and forth between the two. And then oftentimes what I also do is I remap my leader A key. So I'll say no remap. You can see that down here in the bottom to leader A to save the file, and then also run npm test. And so what this will do is whatever file I'm in, I hit leader A. Leader just happens to be my comma. What it will do is it'll save the file that I'm in, and then it'll run npm test. And that's what this pipe does. And then the caret means that by default, what this would actually do by default is like run this here, but not actually hit the return key. So you have to manually type cr to hit return. And then what you can also do is you can say WA, which means save all the files that are open, and that's helpful as well. So now if I hit leader A, you can see it runs AVA right inside of Vim, and it's telling me if I can hit return, I go right back, I'll continue. And so this allows me to just say like, now I want to have a name, it's equal to Bob, and we'll put in the name here. I'm sorry, this is world by default. And if we run our test, you can see 2 tests pass. And so now we can say that we greet by name. Cool. And so that's the basics of setting up AVA. We'll just kind of look at it again. This is a AVA test. Pretty familiar if you've used testing in JavaScript before. We just import tests from AVA, and we have a little bit different testing structure. But the biggest advantage I've found with AVA is the fact that we are writing ES 2015 here with import statements, and we're also like writing export default class here inside of our JavaScript file. And all that is possible because in our package JSON, we have defined Babble and the ES 2015 preset, but we've also told AVA that when we require files, we want to run it through babel-register, and we're telling AVA to go ahead and boot up Babble from our Babble RC. So the last thing I'm going to do, and this is just more for not so much related to AVA and testing, is I've been playing with Docker, and now I'm a huge fan of it. I don't think it takes very long for anybody to discover how cool it is. And so what I'm going to do real quick is we're going to set this up so we could actually run our test inside of a Docker container and not have to have Node installed. And so that makes it easier also to port your application and build it for other developers. And so this is really easy. Docker is not very difficult at all. What we're going to do is create a new file called Docker file. And this file just lives at the root of our directory. So where we had like source and our package.json file, we have this Docker file here. And so we're going to define how this Docker image or container gets built. And so inside of our Docker file, we're just going to say this is loaded from our node image or Docker image. And we're going to tag this or use the tag for 940 as our version. And we want the Alpine version. And what this means is load node or use the node image with Alpine Linux. And so Alpine Linux is a very small Linux distro. It weighs in like 5 megs, and so it allows us to install Node and not have to run a massive operating system to use Node. And so once we've done this, what we need to do is we want to make a directory for our application to live, because we don't want this to live at the root. And so we will tell this to create an app directory. And so we'll say run make directory /app, and then we want to make this our work directory. And so when we do this, we're creating a directory inside of this new Docker container that we're building from this image. And we're telling this so that when we run, we want to actually start out and make kind of our home directory, this /app folder. And so after this, we can say we want to install our npm packages. And so to do this, what we'll just say is we want to copy our package.json file here. And so we're copying this from our local directory into this Docker container at this /app path. And then we want to say copy our package lock.json here as well. And then we want to run npm install. And so with this, if we do just this much right here, if we hop over to our shell in the same directory as our Docker file, and we run docker build, we're going to tag this with AVA, and we're just going to say build the current directory. What you can see it's done is I've already had this node image installed, so it didn't have to fetch that again. It just used the cached version. And then because I've run this before as well, it knows that make directory /app, it's using the cache and for everything here. But it has seen that my package.json lock file has changed, and so it went ahead and reran npm install. And so this has built our container. We can kind of ignore these warnings. These are more specific to just how I've installed these packages. But as you can see, it says we've built this Docker container and it's tagged as AVA, and we can actually use this now. So we can say docker run on AVA, and we can just say like npm version. And so what this did is it's actually running inside of this AVA image our npm command and asking us for the version. And so what we could also do is we could say, well, we want to run npm test. But when we do this, as you can see, it fails because there's no files to test. And the reason for this is we didn't actually copy any files over. All we did is copy over this package.json and then package lock and ran npm install. So what we need to do is copy our project into our AVA container or image. And so what we'll do is we'll just say copy our current directory into /app, or I guess we can just do copy ... Now what we can do is to get this latest version into our Docker image, we'll just say we want a docker build, we'll tag this with AVA again, and we'll run our current Docker file. And what Docker will do here is it's going to look and it sees that everything here has already been run before. This was the new step. So you can see even npm install use the cache. This changed. And so like now, if we say docker run ava npm test, you can see it's taken a little bit longer and it ran both of our tests inside of our app directory. And this is where it's very cool as well, because if we installed a new package, so we'll install a new package for handlebars. And so this gives us something new. If we say docker build, and we're going to tag this with AVA again, when this runs, you can see that it realized this package.json file changed, and so it knew to rerun our npm install. So Docker makes it very easy to just move along, and it saves you steps, so it doesn't have to re-download node every time. It's only going to run the steps that have changed, and then once it saw that this copy package changed, then it knew to run this thing or this command, and then it went ahead and reran our copy files as well. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you next time.